Nature makes no mistakes. God does not play dice. Instead, all of creation springs forth according to a few simple, elegant rules. All of creation, including your body. Know these rules and your body comes under your control. Welcome to Mind Over Symptom, where the pattern is revealed. Hi, I'm Lishwi Springford, founder of the Mind Tree Integration Process, which helps you to overcome your symptom by dissolving it at its source. This is episode 1 of the Mind Over Symptom podcast, and it's about radical self-healing. Boy, I've gotten a lot of flack for what I'm about to say to you, but it's important. So here goes. Illness and healing are 100% up to you. Yep, blaming the victim. Except to believe this, you have to believe in victims, and you have to believe in blame. And that's just what conventional and a lot of alternative healthcare does. The first belief is that there's a victim who's receiving the illness passively. And the second belief is that there's a force of illness to be blamed. Whether you're blaming your symptoms on your genes, germs, age, environmental toxins or carcinogens, or maybe on your parents for bringing you up wrong, or maybe you're blaming your symptom on your diet or on your bad brain chemistry. Doesn't matter, it's still blame. The problem with blaming is that it isn't leading to cures. Despite astonishing technological progress just within your and my lifetime, in general, we're becoming less healthy. Cancer is shooting up. Autism is shooting up. Diabetes, obesity, depression, degenerative disorders, contagious diseases, many are on the decrease, but some that have been thought to be eliminated are not eliminated. They're coming back worse, and now we have conditions of antibiotic resistance. So actually, contagious diseases on the whole are staying about the same, and the ones that we do get are much worse. So the diseases are worse, there are more diseases, and there are few, if any, solutions to most of them. The more disturbing to me is that most people don't practice self-care. So while these forces of illness are apparently getting worse, our victim state is also getting worse because we're not practicing this self-care. And this is what I'd like to talk about in today's episode. There's a quote from Lissa Rankin. Dr. Lissa Rankin has a book called Mind Over Medicine, Scientific Proof That You Can Heal Yourself. And there's a quote that really struck me in her introduction. She says, quote, "Sure, my medical school professors diagnosed some illnesses that lacked biochemical explanations as all in the patient's head, but those patients were promptly and quietly referred to psychiatrists while eyes were rolled and heads were shaken. It's no wonder the notion that the mind might have the power to heal the body would be threatening to many mainstream doctors. After all, we spent a decade learning the tools that supposedly give us mastery over other people's bodies. We want to believe that the time, money, and energy we've put into becoming doctors isn't wasted. We're professionally and emotionally invested in the idea that if something breaks down physically, you must seek our expertise. As doctors, we like to believe we know your body better than you do. The whole medical establishment is based on such a notion. And most people are happy to function within this paradigm. The alternative, that you have more power to heal your own body than you've ever imagined, lobs the responsibility for health back into your court. And many people feel like that's just too much responsibility. It's much easier to hand over your power and hope someone smarter, wiser, and more experienced can fix you." End quote. The other day, a friend of mine posted on Facebook that she got in her car that morning. A bunch of lights came on her dashboard, and she just threw up her hands, called the mechanic, and had it taken care of. A few $100s later, the mechanic said that it had to do with her air filter, and she was just grateful because she felt taken care of. Thank goodness for auto mechanics. This raised so many alarms for me. This is, to me, the crux of the problem with victim mentality in healthcare, what I call blame care. I feel that my friend was completely ripped off. I don't think air filters cause your dashboard lights to light up. That's an electrical problem. And I don't think air filters cost several $100s. And I think that this person was completely ripped off, except she wasn't. She felt taken care of. And that was the point. And years ago, I was actually just like this. I was so ripped off so many times by auto mechanics. It was unbelievable. And I remember friends of mine, it was similar. One friend of mine, she had 3 water pumps put in her car over 2 years. And it was like clearly, she'd go in, she'd say, it's making a funny noise. And they would put a new water pump in her car and charge her a few $100s. And, to her, this was her only option. But as I really thought about it, it seemed to me if I was going to depend on a car to get me to work, that is, if I was going to depend on a car for my livelihood, I really feel like I need to, a little more control over the situation. I can't be spending my whole paycheck on keeping the car running. So I learned how the car worked. I got a shop manual. I asked people questions. I got some tools. I actually got in there and I looked in my car. I learned how to change oil. I learned, how the alternator and battery work, what they do. I learned about keeping it tuned. I learned about how to drive it to keep the valves cleaner. I learned how the tires and wheels work. And nowadays, this is in the 90s when I got my first car. Nowadays, you've got no excuse to not know how your car works. For every knock or jiggle or quirk, there are probably half dozen YouTube videos to tell you how to fix it. So it's totally up to you whether you pay thousands of dollars per year for car repair or whether you go to the parts store, pay tens or hundreds, and go home and fix it yourself. It's an option. You can pay $600 for body work or you can pay $30 for a can of Bondo and a can of spray paint. Your choice. What I'd like you to know is that it's the same for your body. You can leave it entirely to the experts, or you can learn how exactly your body works. You can learn what those jiggles, knocks, and quirks mean, and thus keep more control for yourself. Now, the people around you, the message you're getting about your health tells you something very different. And so most people do not make the choice for self-care. It's analogous to if there had been, let's say 100 years ago, an American Automobile Repair Association was created. Let's create this fictitious AARA. Very powerful. And that association went on a campaign to raise awareness of automobile care and the highest risks of illness of automobiles like rust and so on. And also went on a campaign to eliminate all types of automotive care except for, let's say, Ford care. All tools and all auto parts removed from the general market. You can only get them by prescription or installed by a licensed Ford mechanic. And then the AARA set up a huge charity, the biggest in the world, to collect donations to study the cause of rusting. Together we can fight rust, says the AARA. Rust can be beaten. Or how about in as few as 10 years, we hope to have found the molecular pathway of wheel rust, just only rust in the wheel wells, which, kills a lot of cars because the wheels can't turn and the cars just, can't go anywhere. We hope to have found the molecular pathway for this type of rust so that we can more often develop better treatments and hopefully keep cars on the road a little longer. But of course, this is all fictitious. So remember, you do have the right to take care of your own car. Heck, you have a right to build your own car if you want. And just because the average life of an automobile is 8 years, it doesn't mean you can't keep your car going for 15 years or 30 or 50 years or more. The life expectancy of your car doesn't actually decide how long your car lives if you choose otherwise. But you can't get these kinds of special, unusual results without learning what those lights on the dashboard mean, how your air filter works, and so on. We live in a blame care paradigm when it comes to our health and to our automobiles. So for most people, it's, the idea is mechanics look after our cars. We're not into it. And we're not going to become auto mechanics. We're not going to go there. We're not even going to find out how spark plugs work. Nothing. We're not going in that direction. Even more so, this is how most people feel about our health. The way this has come about is that a century of extremely effective marketing has created a drastically new paradigm of healthcare, much different than was once the case. Now it's a pill for every ill, and doctors have power over life and death. Once upon a time, Your health was your problem. Doctors came to your house if you were really, really sick. It was a job that they did. Now you go to them and you consider yourself lucky to get in sometimes. So what's this mass movement away from self-care gotten us? For me, there are two major concerns. The first red flag is that you are now a statistic, not an individual. How good you feel and how long you live is a question of risk factors, averages, stacking the deck. Now you're not responsible for your own body. You're responsible for herd immunity. We are called to get treatments and vaccinations and to undergo, health practices, not for our own individual benefit, but for the benefit of the group. This is where the focus has shifted. So there's a real problem with self-determination and individual choice here in medicine. There's something a lot more sinister about our shifted healthcare paradigm, and that's iatrogenic illness and death. The third leading cause of U.S. deaths is medical care. The only things that kill us in greater numbers in North America are cancer at number 2 and heart disease at number 1. For me, the chance of medically induced injury, illness, or death is reason enough to at least learn enough about my body to retain a position of informed consent. It's equivalent to, if the third leading cause of car accidents was your mechanic, perhaps you would maybe learn a little bit more about how your car works so that you could supervise your mechanic a little bit better. That's how I feel about iatrogenic illness. And this is why I've studied and practiced self-care. The difference between self-care and what I've been calling blame care boils down to this. Every treatment out there, whether alternative or conventional, it focuses on the body part and what it's doing wrong. For example, diabetes. This is a condition in which the blood sugar level goes high, and high blood sugar is a result of more glucagon being released into the bloodstream and less insulin being released into the bloodstream. So glucagon releases sugar and insulin takes sugar up. These two substances control the sugar level, keeping it right in the middle. And higher glucagon means higher blood sugar, while higher insulin means lower blood sugar. If there isn't enough insulin and the blood sugar stays higher over a longer period, you feel pretty bad. But also you start to see damage to blood vessels, nerves, even to the heart, and to sensitive body parts with a lot of blood vessels within them, such as the eyes or the extremities. Now, in our dominant blame care paradigm of medicine, and even most alternative medicine, we'll look at this condition of high blood sugar, and first and foremost, we'll see it as a malfunction. We'll call it insufficiency. We'll call it failure, because it's abnormal. And in our present society, in our present paradigm, normal is the goal. Normal is right and good. Normal is statistically average. We want everybody right in the middle. We want a herd. It's controlled, it's safe, it makes sense. So anything too far outside that range of normal is bad. Our first step in the dominant paradigm is to look at that high blood sugar and decide that it's bad. And the second step is then to assume that this bad thing is happening because there's something broken in the mechanism that controls blood sugar. Okay, so this leads us to look at the mechanism more closely, which is helpful. It's a smart thing to do. We now look at how insulin is released, which leads us to know all about special cells. They're called beta islet cells, and they're in the pancreas. These beta islet cells of the pancreas trigger insulin production, which takes sugar out of the blood. So if we want to take sugar out of the blood and those beta islet cells aren't doing it, maybe we could add insulin from cows or pigs, or don't worry, vegans. Now there's artificial synthetic insulin has been available for a while in most parts of the world. So now we know all about the mechanism that puts sugar into or takes sugar out of the blood. That's really good to know. And now we have something we can do. If the blood sugar is wrong, we can add insulin. So we've identified this mechanism. Boom, we have a cure for diabetes, right? Well, actually, no. We have a diabetes patient who needs to buy insulin to be able to control their blood sugar. That is very different from a cure for diabetes. And over time, without the artificial insulin, the patient's blood sugar is just going to keep going higher. We haven't found a cure. So we've dived deeply looking for answers, but we've made an assumption at the very beginning that the problem is coming from something being broken or not working properly, and that assumption hasn't been tested. What if that initial assumption that the high blood sugar itself is bad and that bad things result from a broken body part, what if that's wrong? See, I'm a scientist, and that means I really ask a lot of questions. What if the assumption was wrong? What if high blood sugar happens for a good reason? What if it's helpful in some way to have high blood sugar? What if the blood sugar goes high for a helpful, good reason? Wouldn't that mean that there isn't anything wrong with the pancreas or the beta islet cells of the pancreas in the person whose blood sugar is going high? As a scientist, those are the kinds of questions I'm going to ask. I'm not going to make an assumption and then go forward from that assumption permanently. But medicine is a technology, not a science. The difference between science and technology is that technology is reactive. It answers an urgent present need, and it uses statistics to do so. So technology sees a problem and says, what do we know about this problem, and what is the best likelihood of solving this problem in the short term? The goal is to take away the serious, urgent crisis. The goal is not to answer questions of why. Big, big, big difference. If the problem, let's say your problem, you've really hurt your leg. It's bleeding like crazy. You cut it half off. You were in this elaborate, let's say you were in this Game of Thrones party. Things got out of hand. Things got horribly wrong. Something really bad happened with the swords and oh dear, now your leg's bleeding terribly. What do we know about this problem? The blood loss will kill you soon. We know that. What's the best likelihood of solving this problem in the short term? Stop the blood flow. We can do this by tying off or cauterizing the open arteries and veins, or we can maybe reattach them to where they're supposed to be attached. We got to staunch that blood flow. We know that. We also know that prayers, crystals, homeopathy, Reiki, chiropractic adjustments, painkillers, Xanax, none of this stuff is going to get us the result we want, which is to not die, not bleed to death from this, leg being half cut off. So how do we know that these alternative treatments and drugs and so on, how do we know they won't work? We know from statistics. We know from thousands and millions of other injuries. And we have a statistical data set that shows time and again that the bleeding has to be stopped right now if the patient is going to live. Technology is necessary in these emergency situations. It's appropriate to place blame. That wound will kill you. Very blaming, very much a victim story, and also true. But it's not quite the same with symptoms. A symptom is something your body does that you don't want it to do. A thought, a bad feeling, a change in body function, such as loss of function, such as blood sugar going all over the place, or say tissue growth as in cancer, or pain, swelling, stiffness, paralysis, weakness, numbness, and so on. Things that your body just starts doing even though you don't want it to. Here's where the blame care paradigm of medical technology flops. See, in science, we don't react to urgent problems. Science is proactive. Science is curious, thoughtful, takes the time to ask what's really going on here, what's the truth. The answer is not statistical because you are not a statistics. So self-care is science, not technology. It certainly doesn't prevent you from using technology. I mean, if you're having sharp chest pains or you can't breathe, I urge you to go straight to your nearest emergency room. But if you want to get to the bottom of an ongoing persistent symptom, you need to take a scientific self-care approach. You need to ask different questions. In the example of diabetes, technology, or blame care, as I've been rudely calling it, asks what is the most likely immediate cure for this urgent problem of high blood sugar? Oh, it's that the beta islet cells on the pancreas aren't making insulin. Okay, inject sheep or cow or pig or whatever insulin. Next, let's move on. See how it's the same thinking as the bleeding leg? You're broken. Here's a fix that'll keep you alive for now. Science or self-care asks, why might my body be making high blood sugar? Is it possible that there's a reason for this? Is it possible there's a good reason for this? Now we have a hypothesis to test. The hypothesis always has to be a positive statement that can be disproven because you can't actually prove things. Proving things means you have to have an infinite amount of information. You have to be all-knowing. If you, let's say you try to prove that all swans are white, you literally have to observe every swan in the universe for all eternity to make sure there's not a single one of them that's black or purple or yellow. So, as soon as somebody tells you that something's been proven, they're lying, they're wrong. It's not possible. And that's something that medicine, technology, does this all the time. It's been proven, technology will say, that all swans are white. It's been proven that this causes this. It's been proven that this is the cure for that. And it's not proven because there are multiple black, yellow, purple, orange swans that disprove it. What technology really means is there is a statistically higher chance that this will work than that the way you're working. We don't really know, but we know that more often this seems to be the case. That's what technology really means. It's to say it's been proven is very short form and technically very incorrect. We've never seen anything other than white swans, is what technology might say, and that's enough for technology to go ahead with what it's already been doing, because technology is looking for the best, most likely practical solution right now to an urgent problem, not an esoteric ultimate answer about swan color. So back to self-care using science. Let's say you want to test whether diabetes is caused by a broken pancreas or whether there's some other good reason. You can't prove that it's a broken pancreas, so you disprove the opposite. You disprove that there's a good reason for high blood sugar. See how that's a completely different focus? Now you're looking for good reasons. That's the difference. So here's something we know, and we know this from technology. Thank you, technology. When you're in a fight, flight, stress situation, your body does some very predictable things. Your adrenaline shoots up, your heart rate speeds up, your digestion slows, your body temperature gets colder. Blood comes into your core. It pulls out of the extremities. Your attention becomes extremely focused. And if your muscle tension goes up, your blood sugar goes up. What could be a good reason for high blood sugar? High blood sugar makes you heavy. It makes you stable. It fuels those tight muscles. And it temporarily makes you very strong by doing so. It's perfect for the fight component of the fight-flight response. Here's something else we know from technology. The stress response is triggered by information entering your brain making a quick decision to implement an emergency response, and then your brain sending hormonal, biochemical, and electrochemical signals out to your body. We know this because we can cut your abdomen open and replace parts without stressing you out at all. You don't leap off the table and run out of the room. All we have to do is remove the information from entering your brain that this is happening. We do this by anesthetic. So we know that it's the brain receiving information that triggers the fight-flight response. The fight-flight response is not your body being broken and going crazy. In the cortex of the brain, just in front of the motor cortex on the right side, is a relay which lights up during the fight component of a stress response. And it sends signals which are picked up by the beta islet cells of the pancreas. So guess what? If you have diabetes, this area of your brain is lit up. It's telling your pancreas, less insulin, increased blood sugar, get ready to fight. The blame care technological solution to this is to override your brain's response to a genuine stress by injecting yourself with insulin. The self-care scientific solution would be to ask yourself, okay, who or what am I getting ready to fight? Different questions reveal very different answers. And what we've observed is that identifying and resolving the stress to which your body is responding time and time again results in the symptom diminishing and often completely going away. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, I believe that your illness and your healing are 100% up to you. That's a bold statement, and many may not agree with me because I'm blaming the victim. But if we can move past blaming and the victim state for just a moment, it opens up an entirely new realm of possibility. And when it comes to healing your symptoms, I mean really healing, not just treating them. Self-care by asking what stress is this symptom a response to can produce miracles. Self-care is a skill you can develop. It costs very little, it's fast, it works with rather than against nature, it decreases rather than increases your stress. It therefore feels good and it puts you in charge. And in thousands of documented cases, it's created real healing. I hope to share many of these stories with you through this podcast, through my teaching materials and programs, and through my group and personal coaching programs. This has been episode 1 of the Mind Over Symptom podcast. Please stay in touch by subscribing to the podcast and check out the Mind Over Symptom blog at mindtreehealth.net to get more information about how self-care works and how you can heal your symptom. I'd also really appreciate it if you leave a review at iTunes so that I can continue to improve what I do. I welcome your questions and feedback. Links to these and other supporting info for this episode are in the show notes. I'm Lishwi Springford. Welcome to the Self-Care Revolution. I look forward to being with you again real soon. Until then, be well and have a great day. I hope you enjoyed Mind Over Symptom. To make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe now and please share with a loved one. The Mind Over Symptom blog lives at mindtreehealth.net, where you can get your free training about the natural laws of healing, and you can also get support. I'm Lishwi Springford, your guide for radical self-healing.